Hey, how's it going, peeps? My name is Nikjojo, and if you've been watching the LCS, you would have noticed that something weird has been going on. GP has been pick or ban in the LCS or the LCK, EU LCS for quite some time right now. Now, I'm not a person who watches a lot of the LCS, but it's apparent compared to what GP was like last year when no LCS team had given him any thought to where he is right now, where he's entirely pick a ban in the top lane. In this video, we're going to discuss what makes GP incredibly strong in the top lane and what makes him a power pick, and the build that the LCS teams have been running and the build that has put GP in a spot that surpasses any other top laner and that demolishes all of his previous counters. For my first point, let's just address the elephant in the room. The rune changes that we had in preseason and the merging of masteries and runes together to get the new runes that we have now. It's quite obvious that these rune changes are ultimately what changed GP into being the powerhouse that he is in top lane right now. Long story short, Klepto. Everything is Klepto. If you're a champion that can get away with running Klepto, you are a strong champion. Ezreal, Klepto, incredibly good. Nasus with Klepto, really good. Fiora, yeah, loads of people used to think press the attack. Nah, man, it's Klepto. It's Klepto. Anytime you can run Klepto on a top lane champion, it's better to run Klepto than any other keystone. If you can get away with running Klepto on a champion, that's good. That's a good thing. But imagine GP. GP is a dude who has about a 4-second cooldown on his Q. It's not 4 seconds. It's about, what is it? God damn it, I'm a GP main. What's the cooldown on his Q? I need a Google search. Just give me a second. No, it's not 4 seconds. It's 5 seconds. Well, you're a champion like GP who has a Q in 5 seconds that can proc Kleptomancy every time you Q the enemy. But that's not the biggest point about Kleptomancy. You see, a lot of people equate going with Kleptomancy as going with old school Gangplank, where you Q the enemy and you amass a lot of gold. The irony of it all is that Klepto is one of the best aggressive keystones for Gangplank, more so than what Grasp currently is for Gangplank. Yes, Grasp will give him that direct increased damage, but Klepto previously, before it was nerfed, well, it's been recently nerfed now by like 5% for the first 15 minutes of the game. You have a 5% lower chance of proccing an item. But ultimately, it's the items you get from proccing Klepto that puts you ahead. Overall, it's Kleptomancy that's put GP in the incredible spot that he is right now. But the reason it pushes him over the edge is because of the runes themselves. Right now, GP is tanky. GP is tanky like how he was on first release. Now, I didn't play much GP when on first release, but as I'm looking through the past history of GP, release GP had good base stats. He had good base stats and he had good laning presence. That is exactly what we have right now. GP with good base stats. And the reason why he has these good base stats is because what happens in top lane is you usually get punished from old school GP in the past 2017. For 2017 GP, what used to happen was every time you'd go to Q in the enemy, they'd be able to retaliate. Every time you'd go into Q a Darius or a Fiora, they'd be able to retaliate and smack you with tons of damage. Right now, every time you go to queue up the enemy, there's almost no downside to it because A, you're proccing mana pots, B, you're probably using Corrupting Pot, which is what the majority of LCS players are using in the top lane. You're running a Corrupting Pot and you have 20% increased duration on your Corrupting Pot because you're running the Inspiration Tree, which gives you about 20% extra duration on your elixirs and potions. So you have this really good laning phase when you start with the Corrupting Potion. Every time you Q the enemy, you're getting a mana pot. Every time you Q them, you have a chance of obtaining, Elixir of Iron. You instantly get more health, you get more dueling power. And what's the enemy get? Now, comparing Kleptomancy, alright, because it's not GP that's inherently really strong right now. Well, a little bit, I think Riot overbuffed him. That's another point I want to make. This will be my second point. They kind of overbuffed him. They tacked on a lot of passive damage to GP, so his early game presence is a lot better, especially now that they added those incremental 15 additive passive damage, 15 true damage at level 1, and they did it twice on GP, which makes him quite good in early game duels. And it's not only Kleptomancy, it's a secondary tree that you go into. Now we'll move on to the secondary tree that the LCS players run on GP is firstly Kleptomancy, secondly they run Resolve. They run the Resolve tree, that's the green tree, is that what it's called? Resolve, whatever. Yeah, they run primary Inspiration tree, which is Kleptomancy, and secondary Resolve. Now Resolve tree gives you extra health at the start of the game, and that's good for GP because realistically every time you go into Q an enemy, you don't really want to deal as much damage as you want to proc as many items as you can. So having that extra health on GP means you can go in for more Qs, more riskier plays, just so you can get more Qs off, more procs off, more gold bags off. So what the pro LCS players are running, okay, let's get to, it's quite simple. They're running Kleptomancy, Perfect Timing, Magical Footwear, Cosmic Insight, and for the secondary tree, they're usually running Conditioning and Second Wind. That's the build for the runes, and for the in-game. For the in-game items, it's classic. Starting item is usually Corrupting Potion for the most part, because Corrupting Potion gives you great dueling potential. Like I mentioned earlier, the duration of your pots are increased by 20% because you ran with Inspiration Tree in the runes. You either start with Corrupting Potion, which I recommend, and if you're a ballsy GP like I am, and a Gangplank, where you fight the laning phase, you go to Corrupting. Or if the lane is slightly, you know, a bit of a hard lane, you can run Sapphire Crystal instead and a refillable pot into a lane like Jace, for example. Jace is probably, I think, maybe your hardest counter, and even he's not as bad as he used to be last year. You don't actually get demolished by Jace. GP is very good right now. So you start with either Corrupting Potion, Sapphire Crystal. You first buy Sheen, of course, Triforce, the usual GP. The boots that you usually get, most of the time you're getting Ninja Tabbies. After that, you're either, in no specific order, but it's usually Yumu's and Sterix Gauge, which are usually found in these LCS builds. So Triforce, Yumu's, Sterix Gauge, Phantom Dancer, and the final item can be up to the player or the circumstances of the game itself. So the final item could be it could be a Morph Malmortius. I've seen, as I recall, it was Huhi running Sterix Gauge and Morph Malmortius. So he capped out his CDR at 45%. Even though Sterix Gauge and Morph Malmortius doesn't stack because of the passive, he still ran it anyway. Other people, what they've done is they ran GA, they've ran Dustblade. The last item could be anything you want. And something I've noticed as well is that with these LCS builds, the players themselves, they're not exactly mechanically that good. Here's the point. Most people think, here's what I think, okay? If people in the LCS, these are players, alright, pick up a champion, they're not going to have 600 games on GP. They're not going to have 1,000 games on GP where you see them one-part comboing, where you see them triple barrel comboing. For the most part, they're not going to pull off that shit. For the most part, they're just going to do simple double barrel combos. Like I always recommend for new GP players to run double barrel combos. But with the new GP that we have right now, most of these LCS players are not even landing combos. All they're simply doing is just running up and queuing the enemy and proccing Klepto. Because think about it, if you queue the enemy, you have a chance of proccing Klepto and a chance of proccing more damage. So right now, it's just better to auto attack barrels instead of just queuing the barrels and then auto attacking the enemy. So you see, these LCS players, they're not actually that good at landing combos, because they don't need to be good at landing combos because of Kleptomancy. And that's the irony of it all, because previously we had to land Gangplank combos to be good. Now all you have to do is just simply land a Q on the enemy, and you can get away with doing it because every other top laner sucks. They're absolute trash. Have you guys seen the Shinshin video? I recommend you guys go watch that. It's a really good video where he talks about how top lane is such a bullshit state, and I could see from the tone of his voice that he doesn't like the way Gangplank operates in top lane, because Gangplank is such an abuser right now. There's no runes top lane that could complement any Fiora, Darius, your counters. Dude, even Pantheon used to be the #1 counter to GP. Pantheon is not even that good against GP anymore. Pantheon used to be like a lose lane, complete lose lane. Now it's like, it's in your favor, almost. It's almost in your favor because you know that you scale incredibly and Pantheon doesn't scale incredibly. And because of the runes itself that we have with Second Wind and the extra health at level 1, you know, we're completely fine. We don't have to die in the laning phase. You add the Second Wind on top of a Doran shield if you really have to. You're not gonna die. GP is not being countered by any other top laner. That's why he's completely pick or ban in the LCS. Nobody can beat him. He has good presence. He doesn't require as much skill, where you need to land Phantom Barrel combos, where you need to land any kind of hard combos. Just do a simple double barrel combo, and everyone else sucks. So that's why GP is pick or ban in the LCS, because there's really no other option in the top lane. Like, there isn't any other option, apart from maybe a tank or someone that can potentially beat GP. But if you could pick GP, you have to pick GP. That's why his pick or ban right now is 90%. Is it because of Klepto? Is it because of the items you proc? It's because the other top laners suck? It's because of the secondary tree resolve? And because games are going on for longer. Remember that. This is I don't think I mentioned this earlier. Games are also going on for a lot longer. On average, games are being stretched out because tower dives have become less of a thing because of stopwatch. We're gonna get a stopwatch nerf soon. Hopefully that comes around quite soon, because games are going quite long in the LCS, in the pro scene, and solo queue, whatever. So the Q games for me are quite fast, as it is. So, as we know, as games stretch on, GP gets better towards the later part of mid-game and the early part of late-game. So yeah, that's why GP is pick or ban in the LCS. Hope you guys found this video useful. Stopping by my stream. If you have any questions, leave a comment in the description below. I'll try to get back to you. Other than that, my Twitter DMs are open. You can message me there. Otherwise, take care.